good to see you too. So good to be back doing this. Yeah, I love these moments of connection and just talking about all things psych.
Yes, me too, me too. I know we've been preparing for these episodes for a while now, and some of the conversations we've had in the past on Zoom, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so excited for when we finally get to record this for real. And here we are.
We are. Yay. We are.
Okay, so tell the people, what are we going to be talking about today?
So today we're going to be talking about what is it like to be a psychologist, and really, like, is it weird to like this work? Because we spend a lot of our time listening to people that maybe have quite distressing stories, sometimes traumatic stories. And yet, when I reflected on my journey, I actually really enjoy this work. And when I think about enjoying that, I can't say I enjoy that in terms of enjoying the distress, but what is it we get from this work? And yeah, I just thought this would be a pretty rich topic for us to open up, and hopefully one that people can resonate with.
Absolutely. I think for me, being, I guess, practicing for around 5 or 6 years, I still feel like I'm relatively new to this profession. And I still have moments where I think about the day that I've had. I spend the day talking to people, hearing their stories and being very present with them. And I just think, wow, it's such a privilege to do this job, but we're holding a lot of the time. And I don't have any close friends who are also in this field, so they will often kind of be curious about, like, wow, Isabelle, like, you do this thing where you talk to people and you help people. I'm like, yeah, I do. Am I weird? Is it weird to want to be a therapist?
I can totally relate to that as well, because it is a different type of work. We spend all day talking to people, and yet we can't really talk about our work outside of work.
Mm. Mm.
And unless we're in a supervision setting or a peer consultation type setting, a lot of it we have to keep to ourselves. But I do really like this work, and I remember writing a bio and having somebody look over it, and I'd said that I enjoy this work and I work in trauma, and they said to me, enjoying working with people who've experienced trauma just sounds a little strange. And I said, well, yeah, I'm not sure I actually, as I said just now, enjoy the process of hearing this information, but there's something incredibly rewarding
Yeah.
about and being witness to this, but also, as you say, an incredible privilege to be able to support people with this information. Often people are coming to us, they haven't spoken to anybody about this before, and to be entrusted with that information, yes, it is a privilege, but as you say, there is also a weight to that as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of things all rolled into one.
Yeah. Yeah. And for our listeners, especially anyone who's still learning or in training, in those earlier years, this is in particular this development process of working out who we are as a professional and how we hold this information, how we carry ourselves through the day, and then in our personal lives. It's a big transition to make. And again, the perceptions of maybe our family members or friends around us about what we do, even handling questions from them about what we do. There's a lot of murky waters, but at the same time, hopefully, if it's a profession that fits us well, we're also getting an incredible amount of satisfaction and joy from what we do, hopefully.
Oh, absolutely. And there are moments, of joy and parts of the work that are incredibly enjoyable, particularly when you might reach a particular point with somebody and really get to reflect on some progress. When you get to sort of work through particularly some quite difficult material, that can be incredibly rewarding and so satisfying, but also just knowing that person's going out into the world, they are a different person as a result of some of the work. And I think when I reflect on that, that's why I want to do this. That's what I'm hoping for in terms of being able to support and facilitate some type of positive change for people.
Mm,
They're doing the work. I can't take credit for that, but being witness to that and facilitate
mm.
that.
I have a question for you. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Sure.
Do you remember when you realized you wanted to be a therapist? Like when you realized you wanted to do the talking therapy thing?
For me, I used to watch, it's funny, I remember being quite young, I mean, in my teens, and I would watch movies of therapists and think, gee, that looks like such an interesting thing to do. But I don't think in my mind I could conceptualize what that path would ever look like. And so I went to uni, did my psych degree, which wasn't initially my first choice, but I'm so glad that I went into psychology. And then I in the UK, and then I moved to Australia, and it was here that I realized that I could do the internship program. And at that point, I just took anything I could get. I worked in organizational psychology to start with, just to get myself in the door. But
Oh,
I knew
wow.
that eventually, yes, it was. I was doing 16 PFs and Ravens and all of those assessments that I sort of see people looking at on the MPE checklist and think, gosh, they've been around for years. Um, and I knew that that was going to provide me with the stepping stones to get to this, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. And through that pathway, of course, you're required to do a level of counselling training and interventions. And I think when I got to that point, I just went, yes, I'm here. I've found where I want to be, and I'm here. I'm not going to deviate from this path now. Because
That's,
it,
yeah, that's lovely.
I I got there. Um, so tell me about your story.
Yeah, and this has come up recently, and that's why I asked you. A couple of my colleagues and I, we were talking about how is it that we came to be doing this, and it made me think about my journey and how I think I knew, similar to you, I think I saw or heard about psychology work or therapy work. Maybe my mum explaining to me, what is a psychologist, mum? Or a psychologist is a person who sits and talks and helps people. And I remember thinking, oh, that sounds all right. I like that. I was so young then, and then as I got older, those ideas disappeared, and I went on a completely different path. And I never imagined I would end up a psychologist until I was at uni, and I was just doing an undergrad Bachelor of Arts, and I had to choose two majors. And I was looking at the options, and I'm going, oh God, psychology, I think I need to do it, but I don't want to do it. It's going to be so hard. I'm going to have to really look at myself. It's going to open my eyes to a lot of things. I was scared. And it was actually my mum on the phone to me one day saying, Isabelle, it's psychology. You're doing psychology. I was like, okay, Mum, okay, let's do this. Let's see what comes of it. And I fell in love. It was an instant thing. I think just learning about research and writing essays on different topics, I was totally enthralled. And so, it just kind of went from there. I just winged it, and somehow it worked out. I'm so glad it did, because I do feel like I found the thing that I could do now for the rest of my life. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt. This is me now, and this is the path I'm on. And whereas there had been a little bit of chopping and changing, I had always worked, when I reflect on it, I'd actually always worked in mental health, but as a support worker, and
Ah,
centers. And I'd seen people that saw psychologists, but I knew that they had more than the psychology degree that I had, and I just wasn't sure what I needed to get there. Even as a new graduate, I sort of, it's difficult, I think, to sometimes get access to the information, which is partly why I became a supervisor,
is that
because
right?
yeah, because I managed to somehow find the information when I moved to Australia, because people were asking me about my background and my psychology degree. And so I managed to work the system out. But I realized how confusing it can be with the 4+2, which of course is being retired, but then the 5+1 was introduced, and then the masters, and what that really looks like. And then how do we even do that? I felt that because I'd had to work that out for myself, I really wanted to support other people who didn't have to kind of DIY it in a way like I did.
So I'm loving hearing you talk about this, Claire, because not only are you're reflecting on what made you want to become a psychologist, you had those experiences where you were seeing other people or hearing about other people doing that psychology work. But then you, through your experiences, that drove you also to then want to, I guess, mentor and supervise people through that process as well. So it's that passing on of that knowledge, because you were once that person who didn't know but wanted to know.
Absolutely. Yes, because there is always that point where we're not sure, and it's not for everybody. But I think it's also about supporting people early on to determine whether or not that is what they're wanting, and getting a sense of whether they are going in the direction, because there's so many different directions we can go in this field as well. It's not always.
It's one of the things I love about having taken this part, because I am a bit of a weird person in that I like to try and keep myself really broad in my practice. I had this early sense early on that people are complicated, and I just thought, yeah, I don't want to just only know about anxiety or only depression or only drug and alcohol or perinatal mental health. I thought, because we can have all of these things all at once or over the course of our lives, and if I only understand one, then I don't know if I'm going to feel comfortable in that space, only understanding one really well. So that was my experience.
Yes, I think there can be some pressure to niche quite early. And in some ways, I think we fall into those areas of interest. Well, some of us do fall into those areas of interest, whereby we might end up with clients presenting with particular issues, and it just it snowballs from there. That's certainly what happened with me, because I do a lot of work in trauma. But like you say, it crosses over so many different areas, because of course, people with the trauma history do present sometimes with with depression and anxiety symptoms. They can present with dissociation. There can be disordered type eating presentations, and also substance use. And we also need to be a little bit across some of those other things, or sometimes very much across some of those other presentations, in order to be able to treat that. So I think that going in broad initially can be very, very helpful. And then it's really when we want to do a particular type of work, I think we can, if we want to niche, that we can. But often, particularly in more general private practice, there could be any range of presentations, and depending on where you're located, because if you're in a rural area, there might be less practitioners, and therefore there might be a broader range of presentations that really you're required to have knowledge of in order to be able to support people.
So some good reflections, I guess, from the both of us about our experiences around the pros of being able to niche and work with particular presentations, but then also how it can be helpful to also keep a bit of a broad level of skills and knowledge, so that we can also be mindful when our clients have got other stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said about having so much choice and variety. And I think that this is also a part of what I love about this profession, because I can do a little bit of psychometric assessment. I can do some supervision. I can do some therapy work. I can run groups, and it's all under the umbrella of the same title. And it's all as well. So the variety, I think, is is really quite, in some ways, quite unique to the profession.
It is. And then you add to that as well all the different types of organizations that we can work at. There are so many different areas that we can work where we can be providing the talking therapy thing. And we can make it, I think the thing that I love is that we can make it fit us, like who we are, our personalities, the things like our values. If we find that we work in a particular area and it might be flagging up some of our biases or in conflict with some of our values, we can evaluate then and go, oh, maybe this is not the right spot for me. There are many other, it helps us to then shape where else we could go and where we're going to really fit and be a great asset as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there is so much scope. And also for people who are listening and perhaps in a position that doesn't feel like a good fit for them, I would always encourage people to reflect on the reason that they chose psychology in the first place, because not only when people are training, and I'm more thinking around master students or also people on placements through an internship program, people who are in a position that doesn't feel like a good fit, it's feeling like a bit of a grind and they're wondering whether or not they're wanting to pursue this. Just knowing that there are so many different options and it doesn't have to fit a particular mold, because often we sort of have this preconceived idea of what that mold is, and it's going to be so different for everybody. And really, I just encourage people, particularly when I'm supervising them, to think about, well, what is it that they're wanting, and how can they begin to look for something that feels more aligned for them, because there is a lot out there. The tricky thing, I think, in the beginning is often in the training, because we're trying to get specific experience, and paid internships can be a little bit like, well, they're getting more available. In my day, most internships were completely voluntary. Thankfully, there's been so much work around that, and now that's not the case. Internships tend to be paid. But often people are so focused on finishing that internship and all of the work that involves, it can sometimes be harder to sort of see a bit beyond that. So just
Most
wanting
definitely.
to, yeah, give a bit of hope to some of those people that might be feeling either a bit lost or a bit stuck.
A bit unsure. To
Mm.
add to that, thinking about as well, what is unique to you? What can you offer as a result of your own unique personality and your own unique experiences? And just because maybe in the workplace that you're in right now, it's feeling like, you know, you're not getting to, I guess, utilize those unique experiences and skills that only you have. It doesn't mean that there won't be other workplaces or teams or opportunities where you will fit really well, where you will be a great fit for clients of that area, of that population. And don't forget that, because certainly I do feel as though through my program of training, we were, I guess, being modeled to a certain mold, and, you know, to dress a certain way, to behave a certain way, which is important. You know, we do need to follow the guidelines, the ethical guidelines. But certainly we were given the impression that we had to sort of fit a certain mold, even having lived experience of our own mental health challenges, or family members with mental health challenges. You know, I remember feeling not so comfortable about sharing those sorts of experiences, because I wanted to fit into this mold of being this professional person who didn't have any baggage, who was going to follow the guidelines and was going to do everything like this and like this and like this. And underneath, being terrified of, oh my God, if I really show them who I am, who I really am, are they going to think, oh, Isabelle's not suitable, or, you know, she has lived experience and things like that. It was really scary. It's probably only in the last couple of years that I've started to really feel comfortable in myself and feel like it's okay to be my unique, quirky, weird person that I am.
Yeah, you've raised so many important points there, because we are all very unique. And also we are, it's almost a little bit of a contradiction between being encouraged to sort of fit this mold and be so professional, and yet also be really authentic in order to develop this connection with our clients.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And the more authentic you are, like, our clients are not silly. And especially, with trauma histories and things like that, people are so good at working out if you're full of shit or not.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think when you talk about dress, I think that it depends on the setting. Now, if you're in a corporate setting, you're probably expected to dress in that corporate, and wearing the suits and the business shirts. That's probably is what's expected. But if you're in a private practice, it probably depends on your clients, because if you're working with kids, I'd want to be getting down on the floor with them. So I'd want to be
Yeah,
comfortable and comfortable clothes.
it's got to be practical.
Absolutely. And if you're working with teens, it depends on, sometimes even like visible tattoos can be actually, in terms of the clients that you're working with, as long as that's a good fit. If you're working with older people and you go in dressed too casually, then that might not be the best fit. But if you're working with teens, then you don't want to be presenting in business. You want to be presenting are. And so I think that we've got to be ourselves and also think about how we can support the people that we're working with so that that can feel aligned and connected. And I do believe that's possible. That we don't have to hide too much of ourselves. We talk about lived experience. I mean, that could be a whole other episode, because there is so much stigma around mental health, which we are in the business of trying to combat in so many ways. And yet in our profession, there's such a fear. And yet, of course, we come with our own histories. And of course, there's a level of anxiety, and there's a level of fear, and there's a level of imposter syndrome that actually is quite universal in the profession. And I think in that way, it is quite unique as well, like choosing to, I think if we break down some of the things that we're choosing to do, we can see why people might think it's a little bit of a weird choice.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, because there are so many different factors. But I think we can, I mean, I'm all for sort of molding the work to fit us as much as we possibly can within the practice that we've got professionally,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
legally, those sorts of things.
Yeah. All those things, like personal disclosure, where do we draw the line there, and those sorts of questions. Again, that could be a whole nother episode, which we probably will get to at some point. But yeah, these things all come into it. That, and I think what you said is right, is right on the money. What you said about molding the work to fit us, but within the constraints that are then around us. Yeah, so that we're still professional, we're still ethical, we're doing the best we're doing the best for our clients. Our clients are actually receiving evidence-based treatment. They are hopefully feeling better as a result of seeing us. And then we're reflecting and doing our own supervision. All that stuff comes into it. But yeah, the authenticity, being okay to be ourselves, our own weird, unique selves, finding the place where we fit. I think, that hopefully these themes ring true for anyone who's listening to us today. It certainly rings true for me.
Yes, I think it's a really interesting topic to unpack, because it is such a unique profession. And I think some of the questions that I particularly, and I'm sure you're the same, get asked by people, what's it like to do what you do? What's it like to listen to people all day? Do you take that home with you at the end of the day? And then, who do you talk to about these things? Lots and lots of questions. Or the other one is, the classic one is, I better watch what I'm saying because you might be analysing me right now.
Oh my gosh, if I could have $1 for every time someone has said that. And it catches me off guard. I'm kind of like, why would I be analysing you right now? I'm not at work. Thank you very much. And I'm going to try and not think about this too much now, about why you may have asked me about. It's like it switches it on as well. You're like, oh, shut up, shut up.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think in some ways, we're taught to listen. So I don't think that once that sort of skill becomes quite inbuilt and we become used to being attuned to people, then that's with us. So when I'm having a conversation with people, I have to say, I do prefer in some ways that one-on-one connectedness, because then I can really connect with somebody. And so the skills I think that we're using in the counselling room, we're often using outside as well. We're not going to stop using that. And when someone wants some, I don't know the word advice, but if somebody asks about something and you've got kind of theory or concept around it, you're going to share that in the same way that you would, with anything that you know about, if it's general. And, when are you off duty
Yeah.
is
Oh,
quite a fine
gosh.
balance. Sometimes the skills that we use at work, we're probably always using.
I actually kind of feel a bit better that you've said that, because I've definitely noticed that about myself, and how I interact with people on a social level, one-on-one, but also in groups, on weekends, catching up for dinners or birthdays and things like that. I've noticed a change in myself, how I was before I trained compared to how I am now, having been doing this for a little while. And yeah, I think my style of interaction is definitely different. I can't exactly describe how, but I have a feeling that I might be a bit quieter now. I feel like I do listen quite a bit more, and I'm definitely a lot more of a moderated version of myself. Yeah, I don't get too rowdy or loud. I think I used to be pretty outgoing, but now I'm just like, yep, just quiet, just like to listen. But also as well, I guess I'm always looking out for wanting to sort of maintain a boundary around not stepping into work mode as well. I guess I'm being really careful to moderate the conversations that I have, so that it's in a neutral, sort of relaxed, where I get to enjoy myself experience. Because of course, if someone does bring up mental health or asking specific questions about themselves, I want to be careful to make sure that I'm still able to enjoy my experience and not become not going to full on work mode. But I definitely do love the person that I've become as a psychologist. You're right, I don't switch that off, and I do love sharing stuff with people. If someone asks me about something, it happened the other day, someone asked me about something psychology related, and I was like, oh, how did you hear about that? Yada 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 yada, and it was great. But that's where it went. That's where it finished. It didn't go beyond that, and it was nice to maybe almost have someone maybe understand or be curious a little bit about what I do. Yeah, it was nice.
Yes, because so often when people ask about the work, they're often asking about what it's like, because I think they're curious about what it's like to sit in the room with somebody. Whereas, like you say, it's lovely when somebody actually asks you about a theory of something, or asks you a little bit about information. What books would be good to read on something? And that's the sort of information I think we can very easily and ethically share with people. We want
Yeah.
people to feel that they can access resources and information without
Yeah.
feeling stepping into work mode.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I really enjoy that, because, of course, it is unusual sometimes to be able to speak about what we do,
Yeah.
because actually we can't really speak about what we actually do
Yeah.
unless it's very broad, more sort of conceptual terms around our work field, and this is what I'm interested in, but you can't talk about actually what happens in the day.
Okay, so something you mentioned before, Claire, around that heaviness that we sometimes feel as a result of what we do. I mean, you and I have been painting this lovely, joyful picture about how it's changed us and how much we love it. But in reality, we are often coming home feeling pretty tired most days, and like we don't really want to talk much. So I wonder if we could touch on that as a way to finish today.
Yes, It's interesting because on the one hand, there's a part of me that really loves connecting with people, and that sort of level of attunement. I find very, very satisfying and rewarding. But yes, absolutely, a full day. There are times when I just actually don't really want to, engage too much at all. And I'd be interested in your perspective, but in terms of like what I want to watch on television or what I want to read, I find that sometimes I'm really just looking for something that's very light.
Mm,
And I'll look at, so I'll get on Netflix and I'll look and I think, oh, that it reminds me too much of something heavy. And so
yeah,
I'm looking for something light and easy and doesn't take too much of my brain power to work out.
yes. I think for me, the trashier the better. Most definitely. As far away from any sort of serious talk about any human related things is where I want to be after a long day at work. But just reflecting, I guess, on that balance of, we do this work, we spend most of our day listening to people, giving from our resources. How do we refill our own resources?
So for anybody listening here, and I think really resonating with the fact that this job is really quite unique, and the fact that it does hold both some joyful components and rewarding components, but also quite a lot of weight and responsibility. Um, One of the things that I always recommend is having some support with peers who get it, who understand it, because other therapists, even if it's other provisionals and reaching out for support in that way, I think will get that challenge without you having to explicitly explain that. I think sometimes when we explain what we do to people, like, I provide one-on-one therapy, there might be this sort of perception of me sitting in an armchair just chatting to people all day. And of course,
Mm,
that is reality, but it's so much more than that
yeah,
um, that's required. And so I think not everybody, our friends and family may not get the job as it really is. And yet other therapists, they just somehow, they know they're living it. And
yeah,
so always recommend to have some peer support, even
mm,
outside formal supervision, where you can just tell someone how your day was, give them a
yeah,
call at the day,
yeah,
and that debrief that is difficult to get from somebody not in the profession.
yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that, Claire, because now that you're talking about it, I can certainly think of days where I've had a peer outside of my workplace who I may not even be doing formal supervision with, but who is a fellow therapist, sometimes psychologist and sometimes not. And it's just like, oh my gosh, this happened today. Can we talk about it in a de-identified manner, in a confidential manner? There is a shared understanding that we both have that responsibility of confidentiality, but just being able to go, wow, like that was big, that was heavy, that was a lot, whatever it might be. Yes, I think that some days if I came home and I didn't do that, I probably would have been carrying some of that through the rest of that night. So, yeah, such a great suggestion. Thank you, Claire.
Well, we need support as well. We're in the
Yeah.
business of supporting people, and I think it often gets overlooked. I don't know how much emphasis there is in the training, not the university training, around our own self-care, around imposter
Mm.
syndrome and burnout and vicarious trauma and all
Oh
those
gosh,
other,
yes.
we hold that.
Yes. Yes. Oh, we could do a whole episode on vicarious trauma as therapists. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So these are all really good things for us to keep in mind on our journey at whatever point of the journey that we are on. Um, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Claire, for being here with me.
Thank you, Isabel. It's great to be here,
Yeah.
and we'll look forward to tuning in again.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.